fix that somehow, Jamie.
You mean to AI what you said?
Please, thank you.
Welcome to another episode of the Creature Popcast. I'm Mike.
And I'm Lindsay.
How are you, Lindsay?
I'm okay today.
Good, me too. Is it beginning to look a lot like Christmas?
It's beginning to look a lot like fall.
Well, that's what I wanted to bring up at first, which is, it's so funny because this is our Christmas episode, everyone. We're going to be doing 1974's Black Christmas. And I kind of was like, I'm not going to be feeling like this. This is 36 hours after Halloween is when I'm watching this movie for a next day record. And then the first two commercials when streaming this were Christmas commercials. And I'm like, well, I guess capitalism says I am watching a Christmas movie now. Yeah. So that kind of got me in the mood. Okay, what we are here for, like I said, is 1974's Black Christmas. This was directed by Bob Clark, and he's a real interesting dude. He was an American guy who moved to Canada to make movies because at the time there was a tax haven for Americans there, and it was just cheaper to make these things. And he ended up making some of the most successful films in Canada's history. His first movie is called Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, which I love. What the
hell is that?
I've never talked about Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things.
I don't think so.
It is kind of a formative horror comedy. It's like 1972. It's not good.
Okay.
It's kind of boring, but it's a good attempt. So I might be revisiting that, but I just love that title. Then he co-wrote and directed Porky's, which basically became the template for all American sex comedies going forward.
Right.
You know, and so he dabbled with horror and comedy. He dabbled with sex comedies. And then he did this, which we're going to talk about. And then after this, he went on to write and direct A Christmas Story, which, guys, Christmas Story is one of, this guy's kind of like the Canadian Sean Cunningham, but more successful than Sean Cunningham. He went out and nailed it in all these different genres.
Okay.
And only later all these movies didn't do very well, but then later they all got a cult following.
Cult followings, yeah.
Which this one did as well. So, Lindsay, I'm going to let you take it and run.
Before I start into the plot of this movie, I did want to say that there is lore about this movie existing because it's older than me, But I wanted to say that, people have talked about how this movie is supposed to be, a statement on violence against women on college campuses. The entire movie was supposed to say something about that and bring it to light. And
this is already going into wildly different directions. But, okay.
I wanted to say that before we started the movie because there's points in it that I wanted to bring back to that. And also, it's obviously considered one of the first slasher movies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Largely considered, as I'm sure we'll go into, Halloween took that ball 4 years later and ran with it. I do feel like this is definitely a proto-slasher. I mean, we could talk about Peeping Tom, and we could talk about Psycho. Psycho's 1960.
Right.
But how many hairs do you want to split? Really.
We don't need to. I just wanted to say those things before we start the movie.
Okay. Yeah, I'm very interested because I feel like as we go, I'm going to prove myself to be a liar. But I thought that this was a very interesting kind of across the straight shot and that didn't have a ton to say politically on purpose. Well, that's not true. Anyway, let's talk about it.
Okay, let's talk about it. Okay, so the movie opens up on a house decked out for Christmas with Christmas lights. It's winter time. A woman is walking up to the house and goes in.
This is a big sorority house.
Right, and as she's gone inside, we're looking through the window at the people that are inside the sorority house. Yeah. So then we change perspectives to an actual watcher. Yeah, there's an actual person that we are the watcher. So inside, one of the girls closes the front door and commenting about who left the door open because that door doesn't lock.
Well, it comes back later. I think they don't specifically say it doesn't lock. They just say it's broken. It comes back at the very end to be like, I don't think they shut that door because it's hard to open once it's shut all the way.
Right. Yes, we did see that.
A lot of things are seeded in this movie that do pay off later.
Sure. So we're back at the watcher's perspective. And so since that door got shut, he now goes to the side of the house and he looks at a trellis to climb the trellis.
Strongest trellis in the world.
Yeah. So then we're back inside with, it looks like the dregs of a party, and it's time for the girls to kick all the guys out of the house. And simultaneously, as they're kicking all the guys out, we see that the watcher has gotten inside via the attic. So he took the trellis all the way up to the top and gotten into the attic. Yeah. So then we meet Barb, and she's on the phone with her parents, and her mom's not gonna let her come home for Christmas or something.
Barb is one of my favorite characters in this. She's played by Margot Kidder, who most people, that's their Lois Lane from the Chris Columbus movies. She plays Kathy Lutz, the wife in the Amityville Horror. That's where I know her from, other than this movie. She is wonderful, has a rather tragic history, R.I.P., but she's great in this because she is a wild alcoholic.
Yeah, wild alcoholic.
She
the
is
entire time she's
drinking
drunk.
the entire time, and we get a little bit of her trauma here where she's very looking forward to seeing her mother. The phone call that we overhear is basically her mother telling her she's not coming.
Yeah.
She's going with yet another man who Barb's wondering who this guy is, and then out loud calls her, "You're a real gold-plated whore, Mom," is what she calls her. It is a crazy thing. And one of the things that's going on here that happens throughout this movie in different ways is there's this conversation is going on while the rest of the party's talking.
Yeah.
There's a ton of crosstalk and a ton of like multitasking they're asking the viewer to do throughout this
there
movie
is.
that I found in this viewing to be very interesting.
So she gets off the phone and she asks some of the girls that are still there at the house if they want to go skiing in the next couple days.
Yeah.
And 2 of the girls say yes, and the third one, Claire, says no, she has other plans. So then the phone rings. There's a call, and they're like, oh my God, it's him again. The moaner, they called him.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like he's escalated, and he says a bunch of really dirty things here.
It's crazy. It's a whole lot. Now, I wanted to ask your opinion. Do you think that these girls got just like a previous perverted phone caller and this is a different guy now that he's there, or this is an actual escalation?
I think it's an actual escalation, that they've been getting moaning phone calls, and now this person is in.
This isn't moaning. This is saying some of the most
do you want me to read some of it?
Hey, babe, if you want to. I'm not going to.
I wrote a bunch of it down. It's pretty dirty, but it's like, let me stick my tongue on it and lick it. You pig cunt. Let me lick your pretty piggy cunt. I'll come all over, suck my big cock. Things like that.
I'm glad
over
you're
and
doing
over again.
your actual reading of this.
Oh yeah, no, totally. I mean, I didn't write all of them down. I just wrote some. Like, this basically says the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And then Barb, she starts talking back to him and calling him a creep and all that kind of stuff. And then the guy says, "I'm gonna kill you," and hangs up the phone.
Yep.
And we get an actual dial tone.
And then they call the police?
Nope.
We will get into all of that. There's definitely some kind of subtle anti-police shit in this, and then there's anti-police shit for me because they all suck in this movie.
There's not just anti-police shit. There's also like police not helping. I mean, I guess it's
Well, that's
anti-police.
why.
Yeah.
Also, like, in the 70s, I don't know if a group of college girls could call the cops and be like,
Exactly.
Well,
and that is part of my point here.
No,
Yeah.
I mean,
phone calls, and now they said they'd be like, okay, we'll write it down.
my only not pushback is it's not that it's subtle. This movie is outright telling you over and over again that these women are on their own. It gets halfway to be a police procedural at the end of this thing, where we spend as much time with the cops as not. John Saxton later in this movie is one competent professional cop, but when the moment the girls aren't looking, he's cracking jokes.
Yeah.
He's not taking it as seriously as he should. No person in this movie takes these girls' plights seriously, and the girls know that in real time.
Well, and that's kind of like what I wanted to get at the point in the original part where I was going to say, like, this is supposed to be like a movie that's saying something about violence in college campuses towards women. And part of that is the fact that they literally are ignored. Like, they don't even feel they could report it at this point.
No.
Because that's culturally not something that they would be able to do.
Exactly. The things that happen to the women in this movie, that's why I said I think perhaps the girl power version of this movie takes away from this movie, because this isn't women fighting back. To me, this is women existing in a place.
Right.
And they're just surviving. When we get into, let's just move on.
Okay.
They're just like, well, that's what it's like to be a woman.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
And I think Bob Clark is solid in his representation of it, is saying that he's not snarking about it and he's not whatever. He's like, this is what it is.
Yeah, I'm just highlighting what it actually is. Anyway, so Claire tells Barb that she should be careful about talking to on the phone, the moaner guy. And then she's like, a townie was raped a few weeks ago.
Right.
And
I don't like this line.
I don't either. And Barb says, you can't rape a townie, which really, yeah. And then, of course, that now shows light of another part of women's culture 50 years ago,
Barb's
where,
making jokes.
Women hating
on other women.
On
yeah.
gatekeeping who can and can't be raped.
Yeah.
Back then, I mean, like, it was your fault, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
And this is Barb saying this.
Barb is saying this.
Now, Barb is a mean drunk throughout this movie.
She is. And she also says that this is a sorority, not a convent, to her.
Well, I think it's just, like, ingrained misogyny. Now we talk about, like, if you're a girl's girl, if you're gonna, like, be there for girls, or if you've internalized misogyny and you're gonna put other women down to try to increase your own status.
Yeah. I really find that this one is, if you do a girl power movie and you all get a bunch of axes and stuff and fight back, that's fantasy. At least Bob Clark here is going, this is what is.
Right.
And, you know, it's not a happy movie.
Right.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
So then we go upstairs, and the Watcher's in Claire's closet. He has, like, snuck into her closet, and Claire goes upstairs and to pack for whatever her plans are, because they haven't told us what her plans are, but she's packing.
Everybody has plans.
Everybody has plans.
Either family's coming or they're going.
Yeah.
Like, so.
I mean, it's college kids. They're going home for the holidays. So she's packing, and she's like, here's the cat. Mr. Claude? Is that right?
This is just Claude.
Claude, okay. But she can't find the cat. Yeah. She can't find the cat. But
Claude
then
lives. I think
Yes.
they always do a pet.
Yes,
pet.
Claude lives.
So far, I think the pets have all gotten out of these movies pretty good.
So far. But anyway, she suspects that somebody's in her closet, and she keeps asking, who is it? Is it Claude? You know, and then, like, she proceeds to, like, get closer to the closet. And she's attacked with a plastic garment bag from her own closet, and her screams are covered by ruckus downstairs when Mrs. Mack comes home. Now, Mrs. Mack is the house mother in a sorority. If you guys know anything about sororities, you have to have a house mother in a woman's...
I've seen a house mother.
Me too. I love that movie.
I've seen this movie, and that's how I knew about House. She's wonderful.
Yeah.
Also, a weird drunk.
She is a weird drunk everywhere.
Every single scene, she's finding a stashed bottle of, like...
in a book.
Dark,
in the toilet.
dark, syrupy whiskey or something.
Yes, anywhere.
I thought it was maybe like a Southern Comfort or something that's very
It's probably just whiskey.
viscous.
It's probably just
but
whiskey.
it's so thick and so dark. It seemed like this woman definitely drinks sweet whiskey.
Yeah, it's something sweet, definitely. But come on. Like, if I was this woman and I thought somebody was in my closet, I would not have advanced on my fucking closet, especially in a house full of other people.
Sure.
I would have left and gotten a group to come back into my closet. Now, I realize that this is 50 years ago, and maybe they haven't seen that many horror movies.
Hey,
and
let's not victim blame. See how it's happening
I know,
again.
But it was just like, I was watching this scene, and and she's like, is it Claude? Is it you, Claude? And like, come on, it's not the fucking cat. It's not. Who else is going to be hidden in your closet? You already let your boyfriend out of the house, which, by the way, was in a full-on fur coat.
We could talk about the fur coat. So we did briefly see Claire's boyfriend. His name's Chris.
Yeah.
She kisses him goodnight when all the boys are being kicked out. He is in an immaculate fur coat. It made me immediately think of Joe Namath, who was a quarterback in the 70s, who was famously always wearing, I think it was New York Jets, a very long fur coat. And then I looked it up because I went down, of course, a
Fur coat rabbit hole.
Fur coat and men's fashion rabbit hole. In the 20s, men's fur coats were just the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like
the 20s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In America, the 20s and 30s, like, men's fur coats were fashion. And that's apparently what Joe Namath was kind of hearkening back to.
Gotcha.
But this movie is freezing cold. You can see their breath during some of the scenes, and it's just like thick plumes.
They're trying to stay warm.
A dude in Canada wearing a fur coat probably makes all the sense in the world.
I do have to say, like, sometimes, especially in this movie, because this movie is 50 years old, you are giving us a lot of references that make you feel older than you actually are.
Me?
Yes, you. Like, who knows who Joe Namath is?
But
I do.
Yeah.
I don't.
I mean, I didn't have to look it up. Joe Namath was...
I think he was... I also really like watching shows that are recorded now, but set in, like, the 70s and 80s.
Okay.
I think he was in one of... I don't know if he was in Minx.
Okay.
I did like the first season of Minx.
Now, I'm not speaking to any... I don't know anything about Joe Namath's career or his politics or any of this shit.
You just knew that, like, the fur coat part.
He was famous for wearing a fur coat.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
the
the information I had.
Yeah.
And I was like, Joe Namath played football, wore fur
coats.
70s.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I was like, end.
Yeah.
End of information.
I am old, Lindsay.
You're not that old. You're not even as old as this movie yet.
You're not.
You're not 50, so.
No, not yet.
Back to the thing. Okay, so Claire's been attacked by a plastic garment. There's a ruckus downstairs with Mrs. Mack coming home from shopping, and all the girls want to see what she bought. Whatever. That covers up her screaming. So we're downstairs seeing what Mrs. Mac bought, and there's a shadow going back into the attic.
Yeah, it's the shadow of a hulking male carrying the body, and they go back upstairs. This attic isn't attic steps; it's a ladder, like built into the wall to just a square hatch.
Yes,
that has like a trap door. So
but it is like a permanent ladder.
Yeah.
So she sends all the girls to bed, and then she gets into her book booze.
She does.
I love it. And she's like B for booze, and she's looking in the encyclopedias, and she has the.
Has she gotten her Christmas gift yet from the girls?
Yes, she puts on a nightgown.
So the girls have bought her. They're all very happy to give her Christmas gift, and
or it's a house coat.
It's like a house coat. Mm-hmm. It's like a very paisley, not paisley. It's over.
It's floral
textile design.
Yeah.
And she says she loves it. Every time she turns away from it, you could tell her face falls. And then later when she's brushing her teeth, she looks at it and she goes, "I wouldn't give my liver in this."
Yes, she wouldn't give her liver in this. It's hilarious. And as she's brushing her teeth, she's literally stops in the middle of brushing her teeth to go like, "I need some more booze," and then she has secret toilet booze, like on a string in the tank.
It is disgusting. So she looks in the medicine cabinet, both sides first, can't find it. Then she goes, "Oh yeah," and she lifts that porcelain grating sound of an old toilet lid, and it is just covered in like water scale, and then pulls on a string this little dripping bottle of whiskey, and then puts her lips to it, and I'm just gucked out completely. I was like, I know that water isn't poo water, but it's still poo water adjacent.
Yeah. Okay, so then we flash to in the attic, and Claire is wrapped in plastic and sitting in a rocking chair, obviously dead.
This becomes iconic.
Yes.
As far as horror movies go.
Yeah. So then we go to the next day, and we are seeing a man standing in like a courtyard just waiting, which we find out is Claire's dad looking for her.
Yeah, that's Mr. Harrison.
So from there, he has a conversation with some fraternity boy about where to find her, and he goes to the sorority house. And I love this part where we're in Claire's room and we're like focusing on this old lady poster.
This gives me chills every time I see it. My grandmother had this poster in her basement.
Seriously, what is it of?
It is the 9-frame poster. It's the same picture of this, at first, sweet old woman. It reads like a comic book.
Yeah.
And as she's smiling and she's got her knitting in her lap, and slowly, as you go panel to panel, she gets more stern, and then she leans forward, and then she very viciously flips off the camera. And it says something like, "Be thyself."
Okay.
Or "Be true to thyself" at the bottom. It is along the lines as the 70s Hang in There Kitten poster.
Okay.
It was around. But I never remember it's in this movie, and I associate it with, I can smell my grandmother's basement when I see this on screen.
That's crazy.
I was like, holy shit. It is such a weird thing in my childhood to be represented in this rather famous horror movie.
Well, after we get through that poster, they then focus on some other arts, but not as much as they ever did this poster. We're in Claire's bedroom, and we see that she's got some counterculture art on her wall. And her father seems very staid in his ideas.
He didn't bring her here to hook up with boys and
drink booze. And drink booze. Yeah.
And Miss Mac, the house mother, was like, "Don't worry, she's a good girl," and then goes into the other room and starts mumbling to herself. She puts on
She can't control all of these girls. Yeah.
She can't control all these girls. She puts on exactly 25% of her lipstick, just the upper lip, half of it, and she mumbles, "These broads would hump the Leaning Tower of Pisa if they could get up there."
Okay, well, Mrs. Mac has gotten a ride or asked for a ride from Mr. Harrison.
From Mr. Harrison, yeah.
To the boyfriend's fraternity because she thinks, well, maybe she's there, you know? And she's like, I need to go to the store on the way, so maybe you can give me a ride. As she's doing the makeup and half her lipstick, she hears Claude the cat.
Yeah.
And she's trying to find him, and eventually she, like, spills...
That comes to nothing. She just spills her purse.
She spills her purse, and she's like, look what you did, Claude, and just give me flashbacks to my other mother blaming me for things that were not my fault.
Right. Boy, we're gonna get all kinds of.
Oh yeah, this is like got a lot of childhood trauma in it. But so she goes with Mr. Harrison to the fraternity, and we have another flash of Claire's body overlooking the yard as her dad and Mrs. Mac leave the sorority.
I love a lot of this. Scenes going on and then touching base back at the we're doing this a lot where the movie never kind of settles on a scene for very long, or will interrupt its own scene by showing you part of a different scene. It's kind of making you constantly...
It is a little spastic sometimes.
Yeah, it kind of keeps you on your heels.
Yes.
A little bit.
But it's also what keeps it interesting because honestly, if it didn't do that, when it drags, it drags.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think right when I felt like it was dragging all the time...
This is about the beginning of where it drags.
This is also a big part of this movie because this is where Jess.
And there's a lot of exposition here, but yes.
Jess tells her boyfriend Peter she's pregnant.
Yes.
Peter is. Do you have Peter's whole deal?
No, I just said Jess is pregnant and wants an abortion, and Peter wants to keep it. But Peter is a concert pianist. It's like his drive. He's been in college for 8 years.
Yeah.
To be a concert
And
pianist.
what's coming up is like his final, I guess
Yeah,
it would be.
it's
He's playing in front of professors.
It's probably not a final. It's like a doctoral presentation or something.
Sure.
Yeah.
He's presented as a stressed out obsessive.
Yeah.
He keeps excusing his like outburst to Jess as being like, I've been up for 3 days, blah, blah, blah. He's a fucking asshole.
Right.
That's all he is.
Yep.
He's up his own ass. In fact, are we at the part where they're talking face to face?
Yes.
And what he says?
Yes.
Jess, this is what I find.
The first time they're talking in the piano hall.
Yes.
Okay.
When they're face to face, she's like, I'm pregnant and I don't want this. And Peter just goes, you can't make a decision like that. You haven't even asked me.
Right.
And then what exactly? But
That's a great face.
what I love about it is that Jess goes, I wasn't even going to tell you. Her
My
whole
whole thing is, why the fuck are you telling him?
it's
But continue.
she was conflicted. She
get it.
didn't know, and she
Sure.
was hoping for the best, and she got the worst.
Yeah.
But she wasn't like indignant. She is just, her face is, she turns away from him, disappointed in his reaction,
Yeah.
and says, I wasn't even going to tell you, with almost a flat affectation.
Right.
Again, this is a person who is in this world and can't get out of it.
Yeah.
So she's not even fighting.
Yep.
It doesn't even elicit an emotional response to her.
Well, I do like that her response wasn't to, like, justify her decision at all. She just immediately dismissed that he would be in charge of it.
Right. And she maintains that throughout.
She does.
I mean, she does later have a justification of like, hey, when we met, piano was your fucking thing. And that needs to be your thing. I have things. This is going to fuck up my things. That's what I didn't like about the movie is they don't tell you what her things
No,
are.
they
She
don't.
literally
They never
just goes,
gave us any-
I had things I wanted to do, and that's all they say
They never
about
gave
it.
us, because like Jess is basically our final girl, and they never gave us anything to connect with her other than this abortion. I mean,
Yeah, and the little bit of
need for one, I guess.
I don't think there is a final girl in this. I think a lot of the character. I mean, she does.
She's a final girl because she survived.
She's the last
She did
one.
not fight, but she is a survivor.
There is an issue. This Jess is played by Olivia Hussey, which I know from the movie version of Romeo and Juliet that they would always show in high school. The one that had some controversy because there is some nudity in it,
Right.
and you're in watching in high school and going, "Oh my god!" And they're very young actors. She always maintained that that was never a problem until she sued them 2 years ago. For it. So who knows what kind of unpacking she had to do. My issue with her is I think Olivia Hussey, I haven't seen her in a lot. I think she's great in a Shakespeare play, but in here she seems a little. It feels like during the movie she warms up to it.
Right.
She's very kind of choppy at first and then gets better and better as she goes.
Right.
She actually did this movie because her psychic told her that she would make a bunch of money doing a movie in Canada. So a psychic told her to do this.
Okay.
Okay, anyway.
Okay, so, well, Jess leaves Peter and he's angry, but he still has his final to do,
Right.
you know. And she goes back to the house. There's another prank call. I did not write any of it, what he said down.
This is important because he never gets that. This is what freaks me out about this movie is what we learned to call the caller's Billy.
Yeah.
He stops with this perverted pornographic stuff and starts going into all these different voices.
He does.
The sound design on it is terrifying because it's a baby crying almost, and then a child screaming, then a father like hitting, and then a mother
woman, yeah.
pleading. And at one point, somebody who's listening is like, is this all one person?
Mm-hmm.
So it is like this whole like gibbering, scary family abuse scenario that's playing out on the other side of this phone.
Right.
Apparently from this one wackadude up in the attic.
Right.
So like just thinking of a guy up there doing a whole thing in the phone is like, what is that?
Yeah, it's pretty scary. I missed a whole scene I didn't write down, the Santa Claus scene.
Oh, the Santa Claus scene is almost nothing.
Yeah.
It's Phil. This is short for Phyllis. She's also awesome and in this movie quite a bit.
Yes.
What's that actress?
Andrea Martin.
Yeah.
She's the nun in Evil, if anybody.
The show Evil. Right?
She's also in like My Big Fat Greek Wedding as the
Okay.
crazy aunt with the twin in her shoulder.
She's great in this.
She's great in this.
The Santa is her boyfriend. He's kind of funny. They got disappointing plans, and he's sitting there with children coming to the sorority house on his lap, and he's just going, ho, 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 fuck. Ho,
Yes.
ho, ho, shit.
Yes. And this is at the fraternity. This is when they go to the fraternity.
And, it's at the fraternity.
Yeah, and Barb is like super drunk. And she's like boozing up the children.
Yeah. She's like giving this boy booze, and she's like, this one's plastered.
And just keeps giving him champagne.
She's wildly irresponsible.
Yes.
And this kind of like points to, these scenes are there and they're funny.
Yeah, they are.
This is kind of a funny movie at times.
Sometimes.
And so later on you see this scene and then you think about A Christmas Story and you go, oh, yeah, these two do absolutely connect.
Okay, I can see that now. I didn't realize, honestly, because I wasn't going into this movie knowing that he made Christmas Story.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the dad and some of the sorority girls go to the cops to report Claire missing, Mr. Harrison. And the sergeant at the desk,
that's Nash.
He does not take them seriously.
Well, and he's a fucking idiot that ruins everything.
He does. He
gets
ruin
people
everything.
Killed in this movie.
He does get these people killed in this movie, yes. But to the point where, like, everybody leaves except for Barb, who then is leaving her phone number, and this is back in the day where they had, like, what were they called?
Telephone extensions, right?
Yeah, something. You had to, like, an FE was, she said, was my new extension, and it stands for fellatio, and then this guy does not know what it is. It's a funny little joke.
It's a little seed for later.
She's playing jokes on him, so Jess goes and gets Chris. He's playing hockey with his buddies.
Yeah.
And so Chris, obviously, if you remember, Chris is Claire's boyfriend. She gets him and say, Claire's missing, they're not taking us seriously, etc. And then Chris and Jess go to the cops.
Right. And Chris walks in, and this is another one of these things. It takes a man in this world to get anything done. Chris walks in and just starts fucking taking names. Yeah. Tells Nash to shut the fuck up, and he starts screaming for Lieutenant Fuller, I believe his name is.
Okay, he's a detective, basically.
He's a detective.
Yeah, and they know each other.
They know each other. Yeah. Like, Chris's dad knows him.
Now, right before that happens.
This is important.
Yeah, this is really important. The detective is interviewing a mother who has got a missing 13-year-old child. Right. She's been missing since noon or something that day.
This whole movie takes place in, like,
24 hours.
24 hours.
Like, it's a really quick movie. So, like, her 13-year-old daughter didn't come home. They had plans, all that kind of stuff. So, like, he's talking to her, and then Chris walks in with all the drama.
Right, and real quick, let me just establish this lieutenant, he's one of the bigger names of the movie. This is played by John Saxton, who I love and everything. He is in Enter the Dragon, but again, John Saxton is better known to me as Nancy's dad in various Nightmare on Elm Street movies. He's in the first one, the third one.
Okay.
In A New Nightmare. He's excellent in this role.
He is excellent
because
in this role.
He is the one cop that's good at his job, is taking this seriously to a degree, and then every time he doesn't, you go, oh, it just kind of falls out. You're like, this guy isn't going to help either.
Yeah, it's still a product.
He's going to help to the extent that he's going to help, and it's just not going to be enough.
Right.
So yeah, John Saxon's now on
okay, so
the
he gets more serious, starts to take it seriously. So Jess and Chris go back to the sorority house and grab people for a search party. So Mr. Harrison and Phil join the search party. So it leaves us with basically drunk Barb and Mrs. Mack in the sorority house, yeah. And so they go to the park for the search party, and the Watcher has come back into the house. So we're back there again. Mrs. Mack hears Klaus in the attic and goes up to investigate, right?
Claude the cat.
Why did I wrote Klaus? Sorry about that, guys.
Just making sure we're on the same page. The cat.
The cat. She hears the cat in the attic and goes up to investigate because someone is up there, it's like she hears the cat, like she's like, how did this cat get up these ladder? I don't think the cat is up this ladder, but she still hears the cat up there, so she goes up there.
The cat is up there though, right?
The cat is up there.
The scene where Klaus is on the bodies.
Claude.
You did this to me.
I did. I'm so sorry.
You did that to me.
I did that. I'm sorry.
It's on the lap of the body.
Yeah, licking her face.
Licking her face. Yeah.
Okay, so Mrs. Mack, she sees Claire's body, and then she turns around because there's somebody holding a hook.
It is weird.
Like a big, giant hook on a chain.
So it is.
Why is that in the attic?
Have you ever seen one of those like giant wooden chalk pulleys?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like something you see on a fisherman's wharf.
It's like an industrial thing. I don't know why it's up here.
I don't either.
But it's a giant wooden thing on a chain with a giant hook.
Yeah.
And it just flies.
He just swings it at her.
And there goes Mrs. Mack.
Yeah. So then the Watcher decides to throw a giant fit and starts destroying things in the attic. Like, he had to murder her, and now he's mad that he had to do that.
The killer is
wacky.
He's going through characters, and he's going through phases, and he's going through whatever. So, yeah, and all of this, anytime you see Billy, this is Bob Clark. He strapped a camera to himself.
Oh, you know POV. Who he is. Okay.
Yeah, he played Billy anytime you see him, because most of the time he's in point of view.
Got it. Well, back at the park, we're doing the search party, yada, 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 and then we hear screaming, Janice, and they have found the body of the missing 13-year-old in the park.
Right. They don't show it.
They don't show it.
This is a fairly bloodless movie.
I mean, come on.
What am I? Oh, okay, fine. The glass menagerie.
Yes, the glass menagerie, yes. So then they go back in the house. There's another call.
We have also seen Peter completely fuck up his piano.
Oh, yeah. He bombed his final and he like attacked his piano.
And then he beats the shit out of his piano.
Yeah. Anyway, so like there's the other call. I can't remember who answers the call. Are all the people back in the house?
I'm not real sure. It's only important who's left a little later on.
Right. Well, so Barb is obviously in the house, so the girls have to be back in the house. Jess and Phil need to be back in the house at this point. So there's another call, and he's like, please stop me, help me. Filthy Billy, I know what you did, Billy, etc., like that.
Yeah.
So Jess is then calling to report and phone calls to the cops. So I think Jess is alone because I think Phil is still out there.
Yes, I love the scene actually, and yes, Phil and Chris and Mr. Harrison are when this phone call is taking place.
They're warming up around a fire, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're taking a break from, they found the body. So they're now warming up. Nash is the one taking the call from Jess, correct? The shitty cop.
The shitty cop, yeah.
And the shitty cop is like, it's probably your boyfriend. It's probably whatever. You probably did this to yourself, basically.
Yep.
And hangs up the phone and walks off frame. And Phil, Chris, and Mr. Harrison all stand up.
Yep.
Walk shoulder to shoulder.
Oh, because they're in the like lobby of the police station at the same time that she's calling to report about the call.
And as Nash pawns it off, the three of them silently stand up, walk slowly to where Nash was writing down the stuff, and notice it's that address. And it's like a silent team up where all three of them are like, "This motherfucker's not doing anything.
Yeah,
we're sitting right here."
Yeah. So he kind of gets in trouble too, because like obviously there's a missing woman and there's a guy with prank calls in the same fucking house. Obviously somebody is after them.
It's just not. This is pissing you off.
It is. It makes me angry that like people just like disregard women.
I love that this movie's getting to you for the reason I really like it. I think this is something that's so. This movie isn't sugarcoating and is like kind of putting in your face. So when you walk away from this, you kind of have to deal with it.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay. And in this movie, it definitely made me realize or come to the realization why, when they remade it this recent time, that they made it a girl power movie.
Because it made you feel better.
Of course. Because like this movie was just showing us like an open picture of what life really is.
But to touch on that, as slasher films become a thing after this, again, the slashers make it everyone's fault, especially the women. They had sex, they did drugs, all the things. This movie, these women are smart.
Yeah.
They talk to each other. They're family. No woman in this does anything wrong other than Barb has a drinking problem and needs to go to therapy.
No, it is like normal women, and this is happening to normal women.
There's nothing exaggerated about these women.
No, not at all. Okay, so we go back to the house where she just finished complaining to the cop on the phone, and we see a shadow coming down the stairs, and it turns out to be Peter.
Right. Peter's in the house.
Now, he did say...
occupied space.
Yeah, he did tell her that he would talk to her later tonight. So she is expecting, and that's why she's back in the house by herself. She is expecting Peter to come over and talk to her.
And, there's breadcrumbs and there's all this plausible deniability. Because he even says it's freezing outside. I can't just wait outside.
So I waited in your room and I fell asleep.
Exactly. Yeah. So he took it. So all of this... Okay, did you ever suspect Peter?
Did I ever suspect Peter?
Did you think Peter was the killer in this?
I mean, this is my second watch on this movie, so I knew going in it wasn't Peter.
Okay.
But I felt my brain recognizing that this is where they're expecting me to suspect Peter.
Yes.
You know? And that is where... So, like, if this was my first watch, probably 100% I would have suspected Peter.
Okay. I think the movie does that for sure, but also is more of a story part to keep everyone from not taking this seriously. Because, as we'll see, Peter does a phone call that is wild.
He does.
He does do a wild tearful, panicky, maybe even drunken phone call that sounds a lot like the guy. And the cops at this point are listening in.
And they're like, this is the guy.
Okay, we're figuring all this out. And as the viewer, you're like, you're not figuring this out.
Yeah, because by then we know it's not him. So Peter is trying to force Jess to marry him and leave school and not abort his baby.
Do all that stuff.
Yeah, and he causes her of talking about it like having a wart removed.
Yes.
And that is very important.
That's an important thing.
Yeah.
You're so casual about this abortion, you're considering like getting a wart removed, which is a fucking garbage thing to say.
It is, because it's not a casual thing to do.
Is the worst.
Yeah. He is the worst. It's all about him. And he also accuses her of being selfish and only thinking about her. And I'm like, you're only thinking about you. Like, and what you want. Your career just blew up in your face. So now you're like, well, now I'm just going to leave school. We're going to get married and have a family. And I'm going to get a regular job because obviously I can't cut it as a concert pianist. This is my plan B. Yeah, and she's like, well, this is not my plan.
Right. And it just makes you wonder if he nailed that final, what would his opinion be then?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. His career would have taken off. He would not want to be saddled with a child, and then it would be a different conversation. It's so stupid. Whatever. So we're back to the detective. After talking to Chris and Mr. Harrison, they know it's a serious thing, and so they go to the house with a guy to tap the line. You know?
Yeah, and not just guy. I love, this is definitely a Michael move where you put something clever in there that makes no sense and actually muddles up the movie.
Okay.
The guy that comes in, he's probably just works for the telephone company. This is when we get kind of into a 1974 techno thriller.
Oh my God, I love this part.
It's so good, isn't it? This is when I woke back up because we're stepping away from switchboard operators and into their switchboard.
They look like giant
warehouses?
servers. Yeah, look like giant servers, yeah.
And this guy's name, he's the professional here to unscrew the Bakelite telephone and put the tap in. His name is Bill Graham instead of Bell Graham. Instead of Alexander Bell Graham, his name's Bill Graham. And I'm like, there's already a Bill in this movie, guys. Just call him Tom. We don't need a nod to the inventor of the telephone.
Yeah, that was a nerdy thing to do.
I like it.
So the cops also are like, see, if you look outside the window, we put a cop outside, we've tapped your phone. Jess, you just sit here and you wait for the phone to ring.
And it says that cop out there is going to make sure nothing happens to you. And Phil turns around and just rolls her eyes and she's like,
does.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Because Phil has no fucking belief that these police are going to help them at all.
Right. So the detective and the phone guy leave and we see Peter standing outside with no coat on by a tree, just like watching the house. So again, they're leading us to believe that Peter is the watcher. So Phil goes to bed because she's really tired. I guess suddenly she has been fighting a cold the whole time, but I don't remember that ever being said.
I don't even remember that being said in the movie.
She's like, I think I'm so tired because I'm fighting this cold and whatever. So Jess is the only one awake in the house. Barb and Phil are both upstairs asleep.
Right. Barb's passed out drunk.
Yeah.
She had a whole freak out earlier.
Yeah.
Which we don't need to.
No, that doesn't come up yet.
Yeah,
the freak out's not here yet.
Go to bed, Barb, you're drunk?
Oh, that part. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought about the other freak out.
Phil going, go to bed, Barb, you're drunk. I'm like, that has to be the first time. And that that vitriol sentence came into the zeitgeist.
Right. So then we flash to the cops talking about the trap that they've set, and they've got the line all set up, and we're all good to go.
Right. So this is kind of old hat now, but it's when he calls, keep him on the line. They need him on for a long time. It's triangulated. So the calls come into the sorority house.
It's not really triangulated. They're going to follow the line and figure out who's calling.
Right. The call's going to come in to the sorority house. When it rings at the police station. Right. And Graham is at a switching station, which it looks like
a server farm.
Stacks of, sure. But for me, it's like stacks in a library if the books were these weird clicking up and down metal tubes, and each one is a phone.
Yeah.
And it's tense. It's almost like David Fincher-esque watching Graham run around trying to find
I couldn't believe
connection.
This was actually the technology. Like, is this...
It's cool, isn't it?
But I see, I'm like, am I having a hacker's moment where this is make-believe technology? Or is this real?
I promise you, they didn't design this set. This is a real place that they went and filmed. They didn't build. This movie's like $250,000.
I know.
He's
but
running around.
Seriously, it was really hard for me to reconcile that as being the actual technology, where to trace a phone, he's literally having to this phone is calling. Let me follow the line that's active back to the phone number that's calling it. How does that fucking work technology-wise? Because any number can be calling it.
Remember, just 2 decades before this, it was women sitting in a room unplugging and plugging things in.
I know.
Now too many people are connected, so they automated it. But now this is what this looks like.
I mean, yeah.
It's cool.
It was. But I was having a little moment there.
Because Graham is the one man in this whole movie that takes his job seriously and fucking gets it done.
Yeah, that's true. He does do that.
And he's just doing it in this weird warehouse.
Okay, so Jess is waiting by the phone. We see the watcher leave the attic and goes into Barb's room. Barb's room is covered in crystal dolls.
Like crystal glass. That's why I called it the glass menagerie.
All sorts of, I remember my sister collecting these things when we were little.
My sister had some too.
Yeah, they were a big deal. Yeah, I guess. So she wakes up screaming with an asthma attack. So Jess comes running to help her with her inhaler, and she says she dreamed that a stranger came into her room.
Right.
But then we hear carol singers at the door, and Barb goes back to sleep, and Jess goes downstairs to watch the carol singers. The Watcher is back in Barb's room. I don't know if he ever left or he's just come out of where he was hiding.
This is another one of these things that I love about this movie is that there's never a sitting around waiting or doing something dumb. There's always a distraction.
Oh, yeah,
so
sure.
the carolers come, so she's downstairs. That lets him get down. Later on, Phil will be like, what was that ruckus? And it was the asthma attack that could have been referred to.
Sure.
Everything kind of has an explanation for why no one's freaking the fuck out and getting out of his house.
Right, exactly. Back in Barb's room, Billy, he's like, Agnes, it's me, Billy. Don't tell what we did, Agnes. And then he stabs Barb to death.
To death.
It's completely like bloody death.
My being bloodless is thrown out the window at this scene because it is being brutally killed by a glass unicorn horn.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
And also you start piecing together Billy's history. It seems like he had a sister that he molested and then got punished for it in some way. That's what Agnes...
Well, it sounds like Agnes and Billy did something together. Yes, that he got punished for.
Right, but I'm guessing that that's a younger sister and he...
Yeah, we're extrapolating and making up our own story.
That's the whole thing because you never know.
Never know. Then there's another call because he calls after every kill.
And this guy, sorry, just real quick. Billy is never... He's not like a masked guy.
No.
He's just a dude, but he's never seen.
Not
he's
seen.
just his shoulder or he's completely in shadow.
Okay, so she has another call. There's a bunch of moaning and loud voices. And he mentions just like having a wart removed in that call. And she's like, oh my God. This call is now being listened to by a cop and traced. The police call back after this call and say, it wasn't long enough. You need to keep on the phone longer. And then, the detective's asking about Peter because something had come up at that point. They had heard about Peter.
Well, Peter, the tearful call about save your baby. You're going to kill our baby.
You're going to kill our baby. Did I miss that one?
So
no, that's after this.
Okay.
I don't know.
You know what I've learned in doing this podcast?
What's that?
My notes are useless because I can't have a brain and look at them. I need to just shut the fuck up and let you do this. And I'm learning.
So... the police somehow heard about Peter in some way, or because they saw him outside the house, maybe?
Well, and also the lieutenant, John Saxon's character, went to talk to him and saw the smashed piano.
That's later. We're not there yet either.
That can't be later.
So late, it's later.
We're at the last 4 minutes of this movie, aren't we?
No, we're not. I swear to God, I'm looking at this movie at this point, like, oh my God, there's still 30 minutes left in this movie.
All right. Jesus, take the wheel. Lindsay, take the wheel. I put my notes down.
Okay. So the detective is asking about Peter, but then he gets distracted by something else going on in the police department.
It's the buckshot guy.
Yes, the buckshot guy, yes.
So I like this scene. It's neither here nor there. It's a cop gets shot in the ass by a farmer because the cop was on his property, probably looking for
a dead girl.
Of this going on. And it shows... everything stops, just like the fellatio joke earlier. Everything stops during all of this while these girls are having something going on and going like, well, we got to deal with this farmer screaming about his buckshot. So, yeah, it's just anything can disrupt the cops' attention.
Yeah, anything. So then Jess goes and gets Phil up to talk about this call because she's now suspecting Peter because of what was said. And the cops had called her back. He did ask about Peter because he asked her if she recognized anything, and she said no.
Right. He specifically he said something there that made you hang up the phone. What was it? He's referring to the wart comment.
Yeah, the wart comment, yeah. So then this is when Peter calls, crying about we can't kill the baby. And the cops are hearing this one now, too.
And it sounds very similar to what we heard Billy do in the past. I mean, not quite as terrifying.
Right.
But for a cop to hear it, it would be like, oh, this is what they're talking about.
So then the cops ask her about Peter again after this call. Because, again, it wasn't long enough. Well, obviously, they're not tracing Peter anyways. And then she realizes that Peter was here in the house during one of the calls.
Right.
So she's, like, feeling, oh, my God, it's not Peter. Because he was actually here.
She knows. Phyllis helps her get to that realization that it couldn't be Peter.
It can't be Peter. Because...
which, technically, it can.
It totally could have been, but, yeah.
Because way earlier, when Graham is in there doing the line stuff, there is a blink and you'll miss it reference to there's a second phone line in this house.
Yes.
It's Miss Mac's landline. And John Saxon's like, none of the calls are going through that, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter anyway. Yeah. And so there's already this setup of how this could be happening.
Correct.
From inside the house.
So then the girls get scared by some searchers knocking on the door and asking if they saw anything suspicious. And then they're like, you should lock all your doors and windows. And the girls realize like that this is the only window, this windowed door. is now the only window and door locked in this entire house.
I love it.
I am like, they did not think to lock the doors and windows until
Yeah.
this point.
But that's normal young behavior. I like these two guy characters because they're all like, don't worry, ladies, we gotcha. And they've got their guns like, don't answer the door to no fucking weirdos. And I'm like, you're the weirdos right now.
Exactly.
But then it's self-deprecating because the girls go, okay, you weirdos. And they're like, you realize we haven't locked anything.
Yeah.
So now they have to run around.
So now
the
they're
house.
running around locking all the doors and windows, and Phil goes upstairs to lock the windows up there, and she sees Barb's door closed. So she thinks Barb's awake, and she goes to investigate. And she knocks on the door, and she opens it, and then someone closes the door behind her.
Yeah.
Really fast.
It's really subtle.
Obviously wasn't her. So then Jess starts yelling up the stairs after Phil, and then the phone rings.
She is alone in this house at this point.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
right.
she doesn't know that, though.
Right. We know that she is alone in this house.
That Jess is now alone in this house, yes. So Jess is taking the call with Billy, and the trace works this time. They are able to trace it. The guy running through the bays, the phone,
my
whatever.
favorite scene in this movie. It's so funny because it's like stakes, and he's like, I gotta find this
Right.
phone call. And then he does.
And he does. And it's coming from inside the house. Same address.
The first time ever. The call's
Coming from inside the house! So they realize he's coming from the other line. So they radio the cop outside because they're like, dude, the guy's in the house.
guy's in the house.
And we see that his throat has been ripped out.
Yeah, he's dead in the cop car
He's
outside.
got nice second mouth down there.
Now it's all in Nash's hands.
Yeah. Back at the house, Jess is calling for Phil over and over again, and the phone rings again, and it's Sergeant Nash. And he tells her to hang up and leave. And she's like, well, let me go get Phil and Barb, and I'll leave. And he's like, no, don't go upstairs.
Real quick, though,
Yeah.
like it's Lieutenant Fuller is off-site. He's in a car also. They're in different places.
Because he was at the
Conservatory
university
where he sees
seeing how
bad the piano's
Peter
from.
had wrecked his
Right.
piano. This is where that scene is.
So when they go, the killer's inside the house, the cop outside's dead. He calls Nash and goes, get the girl on the phone, tell her to get out of the house, be calm, tell her to go straight to the door, don't act like anything is up because this motherfucker can hear you.
Yeah.
And Nash calls in and goes, hey, get to the door, get out. She's like, yeah, I'm going to go get the girl. He's like, no, just. And she's like, I'm just going to go. And then Nash just loses it so fast.
Yep.
He's like, the killer's in the house. You got to go. You got to go. And now the killer knows that she knows, and it is horrifying. Dun, 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 dun. Like, kind of like the killer's coming for
Yeah.
you. And because they closed that broken door,
Yeah.
just previously locking up, she can't get that
Can't
door,
get the door
open
open.
again.
Yeah. Fucking stupid door. So she
Fucking
grabs a
stupid
fireplace
Nash.
poker and decides to try to go upstairs.
Look, okay, there is some bad, stupid shit in this. She's still convinced, I guess, that her friends are okay, and
mean,
but why wouldn't they come down?
She
if they were
hasn't seen
okay?
enough horror movies at this point.
You're right. You're right.
They don't exist yet.
Again, proto-slasher.
Yeah, yep. She goes upstairs with the fire poker. She gets into Barb's room, and both girls are bloody giant mess on the bed.
Yeah, they've
like,
just
covered
been piled
in
up.
blood. Ugh, gross. And then she like backs up towards the door, and the door is like open like in a corner, you know, like where somebody could stand behind it in that triangle that's left. And she's like on the floor scared or whatever, and we look to the side. This is the most legitimate scary part of this movie is that eyeball, this one eyeball.
You could just see.
I hate that. That's my least favorite thing is like a tiny slit and you see just like
one
eyes.
eyeball.
And
Oh
it's
my
like
God.
it's like red almost.
Yeah.
The
Oh, no.
pupils like red, and it's just all else is dark shadows. And he's whispering, Agnes,
Yes.
Agnes to her. She gets up and runs, and this is where
Don't tell what
fucking-
we did, Agnes.
Yeah, don't tell what we did, Agnes.
Yeah.
She goes running down the stairs, and he is just howling after her.
Well, before she did that, she had the point of mind to like slam the door at him.
Yeah.
To like dissuade him from trying to chase her as fast as
But
he
you
would
know
have.
that thing when you're in a basement and you turn off the lights and you got to run up the basement steps because you know the monster's right behind
Yeah.
you. That's like what
This
this
is what
is
this
to
is,
me in the
absolutely.
movie because he starts thumping after her.
Yeah.
And you don't see him; you just hear him coming
Right,
as
so
she's
she-
like panicking, running down the stairs.
So she gets downstairs and she gets into the basement stairwell, and she's able to. I guess for some reason you can lock it from in the basement. So like while you're in, you can lock so the people in the kitchen cannot get into the basement. So she has it locked and he can't get through the door. So he eventually stops and she goes down further into the basement. And then we see a scene where the cops are racing to get there, whatever. So then we're downstairs in the basement and we see somebody outside in the basement windows.
trying to get in.
And he's yelling, Jess, are you all right? It's Peter.
So Peter's there.
It's Peter outside the windows.
So I wonder if first viewers are like, this is Peter because he keeps showing up.
At the same time.
He was in the house with her, but we know the phone call can come from inside the house. It all kind of lies. Maybe I've just seen it too much, but I've never once thought this gibbering maniac could pretend to be normal.
I agree with you now, but at the time, they're
Sure.
really trying to say that this... I mean, like, they're trying to posit this man has obviously multiple personality disorder. When he calls and he's 4 different voices, you know, he is... Or dissociative identity disorder, whatever they call it now.
It's interesting because he's like, I've been up for 3 nights. It does kind of, all the things do kind of lead to
Peter.
Him being a perfect suspect. It just doesn't add up for me. To be a concert pianist and hanging out in an attic all night.
So then, I can't remember if Peter gets into the basement.
He does.
Does he show? Okay.
Yeah, he shows up and that's where Billy comes around and we kind of cut to
cops getting in and screaming.
Cops coming in.
Yeah, and just screaming. Yeah, and that's kind of like, it was so fast, I couldn't remember if Peter actually got inside or not.
Yeah, this movie just accelerates.
It does accelerate, yeah. So now there's cops show up and they're screaming, so they run towards the house. The cops break into the basement. And Peter is dead, and it looks like Jess might also be dead.
They're both like in a pile together,
just
and
in
they
a pile,
both look dead. But then Jess opens her eyes.
Yeah. And so then we flash to a scene with Jess in a bed upstairs. And all the cops and everybody around her, Mr. Harrison, Chris.
With Peter being dead, they just assume it's over.
Yeah, they assume it's over. So
because Peter's prime suspect.
Exactly. They think like she killed him or something.
And she's not awake.
She's not awake. They've sedated her.
Yeah.
The doctor left, and now it's like Mr. Harrison and a cop and Chris. They're all in this room. And then Mr. Harrison starts to go into shock.
Yeah, he kind of passes out.
You know, I don't know because they've never found his daughter's body. So then they all decide they got to get Mr. Harrison to the hospital. So like everybody fucking leaves.
It is bonkers.
It is fucking bonkers. It is okay. So everybody's like, "Oh, let's go. Let's get Mr. Harrison to the hospital." And they turn out the lights and leave this girl alone.
The man passed out, and they rushed him to the hospital.
Yes, exactly. It's fucking ridiculous. And they leave her with one cop outside, and we see a scene in the attic where Mrs. Mac is still hanging by a fucking hook, and Claire is still
so mad
in a rocking chair covered in plastic. And I'm like, why the cops did not search the entire fucking house?
Because they thought they had the guy.
That's ridiculous.
Baby,
they're still missing bodies. Claire is still missing. Like, how could you not think to check everywhere?
This is... she's going to have to do so much work on those levels.
I'm so sorry.
Leaning forward
so sorry.
into that microphone.
I'm so sorry. I was so mad about this. This was like the part that made me so angry.
Yeah, but I agree with you. But I think this is the point where Bob Clark is very much underlining something. So
they have their guy. They're done.
Well, right. They cleared it.
Yeah.
And there is a static shot outside the door frame of this bedroom where Jess is sedated on the bed.
Yeah.
There's the lieutenant in there. There's Mr. Harrison. There's another cop in there. And
Chris.
And Harrison goes. He's going into shock. Everybody rushes. Everything slowly pulls out. Everybody leaves the room. The lights are turned off. And the camera just sits there. You're watching the closest thing to theater that this movie does, which is doing an enactment of how women are just barely handled and left alone.
Yeah.
And that's where you hear the giggle from the attic.
The giggle.
We see Miss Mac. We see the body. We pull out from that window where, remember, this girl, the first victim, has been sitting in the attic window dead this entire movie.
Yeah.
She's there.
Yeah.
You have to look up.
Yeah. But nobody's looked up.
And that's it. That's Black fucking Christmas.
Yeah.
And I think it's great.
I wish you could have seen the film where he's like, you guys can see the expression my husband just made.
I'm scared.
He's waiting for me to attack him. I'm not going to attack you. It's not a bad movie. It is an interesting movie. It says a lot. And the fact that, like, this morning when we walked into you didn't think that this movie had a lot to say. And I was disagreeing with you.
Well, okay. What I was saying is it didn't have a lot of subtext. It's all text. It's telling you what is going on.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There's nothing. It's not a parable, and it's not an analogy. It's not.
It's
not a satire.
Real.
It is showing you the world as it is. The closest thing to theater we get is the most unrealistic part of everybody leaving this girl at the very end of it, so the killer can finish the job.
Yeah.
And so no, I think it has everything to say. I just think it's straight across the plate at you what it's talking about. This is 1 year after Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
I mean, it had been deliberated for 2 years, but it was it was never fucking codified. That's the problem. It was decided in 73. If there's ever a subtext to it, it's that. It's in the conversation about how men won't let women be humans.
Right.
And how hard everyone has to fight to just get that. And now, be mad. You should be mad. I mean, I think the movie's successful because you're so mad.
At the end of the day, yes. If I look at this movie, I have to remind myself this is 50 years old, so the ideas that women themselves hold to their own standing in society is going to be different than mine. But the way that they slap you over the head of the dangers that women pose when they are in the society just existing, that is a success. And this movie does have its own drawbacks and its own positives, but it is a good horror movie that has something to say, which I love when horror movies have things to say.
And maybe the best little thing is that this movie taught me something that you had learned by living a woman's life.
Sure.
So this movie, I got something out of it more that you didn't have to be taught because I'm
mad that it's my existence and you're just now seeing it.
Not just now,
because you've seen this movie a million times
this is one of those things that informed my privilege.
I think it's definitely a movie that's for men. If
you watch it correctly, you could get something out of it.
If it's just setting it out there like this is what's happening, women don't need to be told what's happening.
Right. Men,
so I was like, that's definitely a message directed at men.
Yeah.
Like, you're not living it, you need to be told this.
It can't be understated. Men absolutely have to be told this.
Right.
We are not in a society that tells us these things.
Right.
We have to find this. And it is, believe me, as frustrating for some of us as it can be for you, because it is incredibly othering in a way that we don't talk about a lot, that we're not treated the same, obviously, and we have to daily deal with the fact that how long have I been dumb? And how do I rectify my
Michael,
ignorance?
this movie is 50 years old this year, okay? Think about that. But the world has not really changed at all. And actually, we don't have... This movie is 1 year after Roe v. Wade, and that is fucking gone.
I know.
Now, it's been less than 50 years, they managed to strip it back away from us.
But babe,
so,
there's a
part.
boy watching this movie, a 12-year-old boy watching this movie today for the first time.
I hope so.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now watch this one and not the remake.
Exactly. I haven't seen that movie, either of the remakes, because
Neither
I like
have I.
this so much. But I came to this in my probably early 20s, and it was a little Lego in how to be a good person. You could take it that way. That's how I took it. A little Lego in realizing my place in society as a healthy, good person. So yeah, I always say, working where I work, that we could change a life by giving the right person the right book at the right time.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how long ago it was. You could just turn this on
Shut
Halloween night and watch it and go, holy shit, now I have to operate with a blown mind.
Yeah. That's the worst part, right?
That's the best part too. Anyway, is that Black Christmas?
Yeah, I think that's Black Christmas.
That got fiery. I love it. So good. But we need to make some room for a question from John, please.
You know what I've been thinking about lately a lot? You know how people get on the internet and they just hate what the other person hates, and then they're just a group of haters. I was thinking, not horror movie related, it could be horror movie related, but who do you think is the most unjustified hate?
Oh, God.
Oh, pineapple on pizza.
It's a
so
good response.
stupid. Everybody
Pineapple on pizza.
Everybody gets so saucy about it, and I love pineapple on pizza.
Way to bring it down, Mikey.
Maybe not bring it down, but maybe de-escalate.
De-escalate, yes, sorry. Bringing the feelings down.
That seems like that potentially is a super hot question.
Yeah.
And we've just been through some super hot shit.
We did, yeah. So, yeah, no. I hate pineapple on pizza. It does not belong there.
My go-to is pepperoni and pineapple on pizza. Extra sauce, please.
I love pineapple. I absolutely love it, but it does not belong on my pizza. Now, I realize that pineapple's probably giving you that sweet and savory thing.
That's my thing.
I like honey on my pizza. For the same thing. For the same aspect. But pineapple has such this acidic part that I'm not wanting it to find on my pizza.
All of my taste buds I have to umami bomb and super spicy stuff and super sweet stuff and then put it all in a bowl together. So I just my brain, it doesn't light up like it used to, so I'm constantly shocking myself back to life.
With extreme flavor contrast.
It will kill me one day. Do you have anything?
Oh, no. Now I'm distracted by pineapple on
Fine.
pizza. I need more time to think about that.
That's a bigger question from John than we're used to.
Give me 3 days to think about an answer to that.
John suggested like Christmas music because obviously there are a lot of people that like Christmas music.
I love Christmas music.
There's a whole section of people, myself included, who hate Christmas music.
You hate Christmas music?
It's for Christmas.
How have I not known this?
Christmas Eve and Christmas Day only.
Oh,
if
weird.
I hear it before then, I'll punch you in the face.
You must be in a bad mood every Christmas season.
Look, no, every
started.
Thanksgiving with our aunt. Like, she plays...
I know, I hate
Yeah,
it.
she hates it. That's what
she
she's
plays
saying.
it starting on Thanksgiving.
And there are a section of people who just, like, hate Christmas music. I love Christmas.
I love Christmas
I'm not
music.
a bah humbug, you know that.
Everybody here loves
But-
Christmas.
I think the problem is that one of my first jobs working in a grocery store, the Christmas music started the day after Halloween. It played through November also. And it was just the same 5 songs,
Oh.
different covers of them.
Yeah.
Just
They put
8
one CD on
hours
repeat.
A day, 5 days
Well,
a
okay.
week for 2 months, and I wanted to be dead.
So what you're talking about is trauma. Because you have been, that's what people do to torture prisoners
real
of war.
Clockwork
So,
Orange
yeah.
situation.
Dude,
That is a noted
I completely,
torture.
dude, as soon as you're talking about that, I'm like, I remember my first job, and I worked at Old Navy when that Cher song came out.
Yeah.
Do you believe in life after love or whatever? Oh my God, every hour, on repeat.
I've
was
never
just like,
had to work in a place where there was
Right.
ongoing music.
Right, it's
so
like this is like the
I would
beginning
hate it
and
as
the
well.
end of my retail career was when I was 16 years old.
Well, that's why I was like, so I don't know. I know there's a large section of people who are like, hate Christmas music. That's a common thing. But I don't know if maybe we all have the same sort of triggering memory, or if there are some people who are just like, I hate it because it's cool to hate it.
Well, I think
I love Christmas music, so
I think there's many types of Christmas music,
yeah.
and I love that we accidentally got here on our Christmas episode, so we're actually talking about Christmas.
Yeah.
Because John's question had no steering into that. Or maybe Jamie's just an awesome producer and knows how to. That's what it was. What is it? Peek behind the curtain there. No, I think your Christmas music hatred is very real. I just heard it. But there's variations. Most of it I don't like. Also, I've evolved that I like Christmas now way more than I have in the past. My love for Halloween has diminished, as I was talking about,
Right. Mm-hmm.
because every day is Halloween, especially doing this podcast now. Is like I'm constantly talking about, writing about, thinking about horror movies.
Right.
You put on Sia every year, and that ain't it for me.
See a Christmas?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But like, I will never not jam out to Carol of the Bells. That
Sure.
thing is like so dramatic and building to a crescendo, and it's
Yeah.
awesome. So it depends. I'm not gonna like fucking Christmas shoes. Is that what it's called?
I
Mariah
was just
Carey.
gonna say,
What's
no,
Christmas
no, no, no.
shoes? What are you talking
The worst Christmas song ever
Is that what it's called?
is Christmas Shoes.
Okay, it's a Mariah Carey song. That's
I don't know
like
that it's Mariah Carey.
Okay,
It's
am
I mean, she may have covered it. She does all the Christmas songs.
Christmas shoes.
But
Christmas shoes. It's very popular.
It's a man singing it. Oh, gosh.
Oh.
And there's a version where there's a children's choir in it, where
Yeah.
instead of just being the... Because I think it was like a country song first.
How do I not know this song? I probably
I
do.
don't know.
I just can't. I need to play it, but I'm not going to play it on the
guy
podcast.
Narrates like he's in line at the store on like Christmas Eve. There's a boy behind him in line. The boy gets in front of him to pay to buy these shoes, and he starts, as the boy's voice starts telling the cashier, he says, "Sir, I'm going to buy these shoes. My mama's sick and they're just her size.
very much. Not.
Daddy says we gotta get this gift before Mama meets Jesus tonight."
I don't know this song. Like, seriously, when,
But
like...
there's a version of it where a children's choir comes on and
Ugh.
is singing that part. I want... Oh! It's not just... It's so trigger... I just fly into a blind rage because I think I have, like, leftover... If you've ever worked retail, it's, like, the worst experience in your life. And it just instantly puts me back in that place where you're working retail at the holidays and
you're
everyone
trapped.
is supposed to be cheerful and nice and they're just the worst human beings that have ever existed. And then you hear friggin' children being the sappiest thing in the world. So we wanna buy these.
Okay.
I
don't
don't
need
even
to-
know this song.
Okay, so I need to apologize before all the hate. It has nothing to do with Mariah Carey. I crossed two things that are hated.
I
All I
mean,
Want is Christmas Is You.
Oh well.
Yeah, I was like,
Nobody
hates that song.
She very well could have done a cover. She is.
I don't think she did.
The Lady Queen of Christmas.
But this song is so emotionally manipulative, and it's like alt country core.
Is it?
Yeah. So
I don't know
that's-
it. I usually listen to like indie Christmas stuff or whatever, like, or I do pop Christmas, or like he said, see, if I'm listening to Christmas, I'm really bad about like hearing music without listening to it. You know, I
Right.
put on something that's going to give me that feel without actually paying attention to what the fuck is going on.
I mean, I kind of like the carolers scene in this movie. I normally hate the idea of carolers come to your house, but it was watching Olivia Hussey's character watch the carolers, and they like hung on them, and they weren't played for
They
a
were
joke.
really good
They were
singers.
just,
Yeah.
it was fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did we cover the?
I think so. It's Happy Holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Go out there and-
Like your songs. Don't like your songs. But
We don't care.
murder people.
Don't murder people at
Yeah.
Christmas.
Ever.
Yeah, just go,
Especially not Christmas.
yeah, pretty
Especially
much,
at Christmas.
pretty much never. All right, that was our Christmas episode of the Creature Popcast. I want to thank Jamie, our producer, for making us sound great. You could check her out at Cherry Street Studios on Instagram. All of our music is done by Kevin MacLeod. All of our art is done by Lindsay and myself. You can find all of that and all of our stuff at creaturepop.com. That's creature with a K, pop.com. And until next time, happy holidays, John.
Happy holidays, John.
Holiday.